crazy.
Are you talking about your stacked CPUs?
No, I haven't even unboxed the box. So here's the box. This is the thing that we can unbox today, which is really awesome.
It's my sample hasn't even arrived yet. I mean, I haven't got Rocket Lake CPUs. What are you talking about?
No, that was they said that was okay. You could do the thing, and I only just got them. See, there's like a thing with some pictures and stuff.
Nice.
So I figured that we might do a build. They've got I've got some slides. I've got the first slide on the screen here with you. I've done all sorts of crazy stuff. So I guess look, that's the center of the thing. It's got an overhead view. It's like a 4-up. This is super confusing. I can't pay attention to this and the chat. It's not going to work out for me.
No, I'm pretty sure. Well, I mean, it's so everybody who's watching, you may not know, but I believe we're simulcast to each other's channel at the same time. This is a bit crazy.
Below. Yeah, so you could watch from 17 different camera angles. How exciting is that?
I'm working off one camera, and Wendell is sending me one camera, and he's working off a different camera, and I'm sending him a different camera to the one I'm sending YouTube. I'm sure it works in some fashion.
So this is the box they sent to internet bozos. So, yeah, I don't know.
And tabloid bozos.
I like the puzzle boxes. They used to have the puzzle boxes where it wouldn't open right away. There was the musical puzzle box and the rocket puzzle box. Those were a lot of fun.
I remember one of their first Nooks was in one of those boxes that you opened and it played a tune. It played the da 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 da.
Yeah, I think it was Haswell or maybe Devil's Canyon when it launched. You had to play that on a little pad, and none of them survived shipping. So it's like some reassembly required, and then it was like, okay, cool, you can play the thing. So
I'm sure between Intel and AMD, they've realized that they're trying to outdo each other on these sort of press kit boxes.
When it launched. And then it was like, you know what? Less is more after a while. So
I've just been told all my links are wrong. As usual, I can't spell.
It's fine. I gave myself some more audio too because they said I was a bit quiet, but it's all good. So in the box, there's this weird cube thingy, and underneath the cube thingy is a rocket. I don't know what that's about because it looks like they tried to glue it in. Are you seeing this? There's a little bit of glue on the bottom here.
Is that kind of like a blown glass design thing?
No, it's like acrylic. It's acrylic with Intel printed on the end. I don't know what to make of it.
Because
the i5 and the i7.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but was it 9th gen or 10th gen where they also shipped it with a magnifying zoom lens?
Oh yeah.
So
you can look at it.
So you could see the 14 nanometer, I guess.
Yeah. Well, no, you wouldn't be able to see that. So.
Yeah, not unless they also gave you a delidding tool.
That was Der Bauer used the electron microscope. That was really cool. Looking at the thing sort of edge on, I thought it's like, oh look, here's a transistor. Oh, it's like 60 atoms.
Yeah. So it's because the processor's anywhere from 11 to 17 metal layers. So you've got the transistors in the first layer, and then everything else above that is wiring and additional power management and capacitors and stuff. So sorry if you hear them clinking. I've got 2 mugs today. I've got my Intel Architecture Day 2020 to go with the Performance for the Real World t-shirt, and the other one is my Global Foundries, which is an interesting topic in of itself. They've actually invited me back to Fab 8 in Malta, upstate New York, when we get traveling again.
That would be a lot of fun. I'm sure that I really hope that they go public or something, and then they're like, all right, we're back in the game. And by back in the game, I don't actually mean leading edge. I just mean doing something other than 12 or 14 nanometers.
It's I want to go put on one of those bunny suits again. So okay, quick sidebar on Global Foundries, just because we're here. They just announced more investment end of the year. Well, continuing of old investment to new investment, plus an IPO. So Global Foundries is owned by the Saudi Royal Estate Fund called Mubadala. They're the ones that originally pulled the plug on 7 nanometer for Global Foundries, and now they're deciding to IPO.
Yeah, with the IPO, do you think they'll go back to doing something? I think they'll probably license a process. I don't think they'd invent their own.
It's David Shaw from Wikichip. He said there's probably about a 25% chance of them going back that way, because they obviously have to then go and buy an EUV machine, right? And there's a 1.5 year waiting list for them. So
that waiting list is probably only getting longer as long as demand goes up and up and up.
Yeah, they said last year they said it was 1 year. This year they said it's a year and a quarter, the waiting list, or a year and a half.
Wow.
So, but okay, sidebar over. You're playing with the chips.
I got the chips out of the packages, and it's awesome because it doesn't just say randomly Intel Confidential, and then you have to write in Sharpie on them what they are.
So it's the review samples are actually proper release silicon.
Yeah,
in the past they haven't been, but it's gone better over the yeers, hasn't it? They're more likely to send you release silicon.
It's gotten better-ish. So like the 10900K still lacked the press samples. I got a couple of those at retail because they weren't bad chips, and the 10900K at retail had some mitigations that the press 10900Ks didn't have, or at least mine did. So it was very, very slightly different performance between the retail and the non-retail. And it's like, wait a minute, I can measure this.
So aside from doing like an MSR probe, how did you know? What?
The performance was consistent and repeatably not quite as good, but only for there's a Linux utility I have that does the return trampoline stuff. Yep. And so like you could run that like 4 billion times. And then it's like, okay, on this chip, all else being equal, it's slightly worse than this other chip. And the press chips were very, very slightly better.
Huh. But it was still stamped as a retail sample.
Yeah.
And it was still the same stepping.
Yeah. If you queried the stepping from the CPU, it seemed as though the stepping was exactly the same. Maybe it was the microcode that's actually burned on the chip. I don't know.
Well, microcode's been a hot topic recently. I'm sure we'll get to
that. Yeah. So we've got the chips, but we need LGA 1200. I wanted to do a build on the stream, like put it together and like see what's up, see how it goes. I can do the wide angle too. Are you still with me on the wide angle? Can they still hear you? Say something.
Hello.
I can't see you right now.
That's fine.
But then I've got above, so it's like, oh my gosh, what's going on? It's like I've gotten really fancy. I don't know why.
So today, topic on the stream. There's a couple of topics on the stream, and you're looking at one now with Wendell, holding up the Maximus 13 Hero. 13
lucky number 13.
Z590 motherboard with Intel 11th Gen Rocket Lake processors, and I believe there you have the Core i9 11900K and the Core i5 11600K.
Yes, that is exactly correct.
And behind me in the system, currently running, is the 11700K.
That one's not under NDA. Yuck, yuck,
yuck. Well, my Borderlands test is still going. That's nice and automated. That'll go on. But yeah, if you hadn't seen the news, if you hadn't read the reviews that are already out there, highly encourage you to do so. This is Rocket Lake. This is Intel's first foray into let's port a design that wasn't built for our process on an older process because it's the one that gives us the performance.
Yeah, this is the reason they went from 10 cores back down to 8 cores is that there wasn't physically enough room on the silicon. Like the piece of silicon would have just been too large, I guess.
I would argue that there is room. It's just a question of economy.
Defect rate and that kind of thing.
Defect rate, yield, looking at peak power. If you put on more cores, then you obviously have to lower the all-core frequency, though you'd arguably be in a better efficiency window. You get additional latency because of a ring bus on 10 cores versus a ring bus on 8 cores. And plus, if I'm right in saying there's been a few leaks saying that the chip is 270 square millimeters, whereas the previous gen 10 core was only 210, 220.
Yeah, I think somebody delidded one of those 10700Ks already. So it's pretty easy to work that out from the picture.
So it's about 25% larger die size for, 2 fewer cores.
Yeah. Well, it was designed for a 10 nanometer process after all. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense.
Intel said that its 10 nanometer process is 2.7x denser. So surely if you port a core from 10 nanometer to 14 nanometer, wouldn't it make it 2.7x larger by that same math? It's obviously not that, because Intel's quoting peak transistor densities there, and you don't create high performance processors on the peak density transistor libraries. But it is bigger, consumes lots of nice power, and it uses Z590 motherboards. Do you want to take us through what you've got there?
Yeah, sure. The most exciting thing about this is PCI Express 4. So there were some Z490 boards that actually had PCI Express 4. They had extra M.2 slots. I don't think the X16 slot on any Z490 was PCI Express 4, but you got the PCI Express 4 M.2 potentially, because the big change with the socket is that there's the potential for 4 extra NVMe lanes directly to the CPU.
So I believe Intel specifically says that it has 16 for graphics, or add-in cards, because you could put an FPGA in there, and 4 for direct storage. Mind you, so you can split those 16 out 8 by 8, and then use like a dual NVMe solution, like one of the Asus Hyper cards.
Yeah. So you could run this in X16 or this in X8 and then X8, but your M.2 up here is always by 4, not through the chipset directly into the CPU, which is nice. They said that the interface, I guess, at least according to the manual in the motherboard, is a little different. But we might have to wait for more details on that because I can't power it on.
Well, I mean, but PCIe 4, you've got higher tolerances, or tighter tolerances to make it all the bits go. You know, shiny rock make electrons go brr.
At ridiculous rates.
You're still connected at PCIe by PCIe 3 by what? Sorry, you're still connected at PCIe 3 to the chipset. Though if you pair a Z590 motherboard with a Rocket Lake processor, you do get that by 4 link turns into a by 8 link. So if you're doing something IO heavy through the chipset, you now have better bandwidth. Though when asked if this actually increases the power consumption, they were kind of like, no, we've kind of got it within the same. You don't need to worry. Not it's the same.
That's going to be interesting. Now, you guys already took a look at a little bit of that on the 10700K review.
The 11700K.
Or 11700, sorry. Yeah, that's what I'm not good with numbers or names of things. I was too busy contemplating, as soon as the CPU, like you close the little door on the CPU and the little plastic protector thing pops out, is that the precise moment that you have joined the Republic? Because that's what it says on the sticker. Like, okay, you've done this act. Now yes. All right, welcome to the club. You're in the Republic.
I want the monarchy of gamers, damn it.
I want the representative democracy of gamers.
The People's Democratic Republic of gamers.
All right, so this motherboard looks pretty interesting. Looks like dual 2.5 gig LAN, USB 2, lots of USB 3, lots of USB 10 gigabit, and 2 Type-C, which have the little Thunderbolt icon. So this seems to have all the accoutrement.
I believe the 2.5 gigabit Ethernet ones and Intel ones are Realtek. You probably can't tell because there's a heat shroud over it. But
yeah, there's about 4 pounds of aluminum here. It's a lot. It's substantial.
Customized audio, 6 SATA ports.
Yep. 2 30-pin and 1 Type-C USB, 2 USB 2. So lots of extra USB. That was appealing.
Was it appealing? Mind you, you can probably, if you can see in the background just there, this monitor I've had for 8 years, still haven't peeled the plastic off the side.
Well, that's how we roll around here. Fine.
It's so to answer the Flash Photos question in my chat, you leave the socket cover on the latch. I believe the correct way for LGA 1150X or LGA 1200 is that you leave the socket cover on, you put the CPU in, and then you press the socket latch down, and the cover's meant to pop out automatically. That way you're not exposing the pins in that way.
Yep.
And it's worked quite well for several generations.
Yeah, that's precisely what I did, because the chat is awful. You know who you are.
And be careful of platforms that don't do it, lest you drop a CPU on a pin.
And I've also got this Aorus PCI Express 4 NVMe that I can't wait to shove in this, because PCI Express 4. I got to take it out of this little adapter card, because the adapter card is not PCI Express 4.
Is that PCIe by 1?
No, it's by 4 on this side, but it's PCI Express 3. So like the signal degradation through the card is such that if you try to use this in a PCI Express 4 slot, the card will drop out and be weird. But this is more convenient than an M.2 slot, because I can just be like, all right, now I'm ready for benchmarks. All right, I'm done with the benchmarks.
Do you do your CPU testing on a system with a SATA or an NVMe drive?
NVMe.
Do you think it makes a difference?
SATA, it probably does, because of the PC. I mean, if it does, it's probably heat related or power budget related, because
as in it makes performance worse.
Yeah, SATA probably is faster than NVMe when you're power budget limited, I would say. Because some of the server platforms, especially some of the new stuff that I've been testing, you can set everything to PCI Express 3 on a single socket system, and there's more power budget for the cores all of a sudden. So
we're getting to an era where you can't have everything all the time. You have to be selective with what stuff you want to be at the fastest.
Now, I wonder if it's universally true for all NVMe, because some NVMe are much more power frugal than other NVMe.
So the quad channel DRAM drives, the ones that are sipping the power, that are ideal for laptop use.
Yeah. I don't know if it seems like just because it's link speed, it wouldn't make a big difference. But it seems like some of those power sippy drives will keep the link in like the lower power states, which are just slower, like PCI Express 2 or 3, until they actually need the bandwidth, and then they'll wake up and go faster.
Yeah. Oh, you're fiddling with your M.2 already.
Yeah. This is always the conundrum, because like this is obviously a very fancy heat spreader, and like, you know, it's got all the stuff here, and it's got the little standoff, and the screw's even pre-installed. That's pretty nice.
Has it got the special ASUS screwless screw thing?
No, it's not screwless. I usually 3D print my own screwless adapters, which work great until they get warm, and then the plastic gets a little soft. I haven't figured out a way around that yet.
So, I mean, the upside of using the motherboard heat sink is that it's designed for the clearance of anything else you put in the board.
Yeah.
So there is that you have to consider. But I mean, so you've got the Z590 Maximus 13 Hero, which is one of ASUS's mid to high end ROG motherboards. If you go to anandtech.com and search for Z590 overview, my motherboard reviewer over there, Gavin, he's done an overview of every single Z590 motherboard that's been announced, all 58 of them. He's gone through them and analyzed them. I mean, we've analyzed the pictures so we can tell what's on it, and we've asked the motherboard manufacturers for all the specifications and details so we can tell which ones are which and what each motherboard has. Prices there start at $175 for a Z590. Now, back in the day, $175 used to get you the top-end premium motherboard. You know,
Oh no,
Asus
longer.
ROG 2 formula or whatever it was. $175 was you could buy the best motherboard. But now that's where we start with Z590. We've also got B560 coming, and they're going to be more budget friendly, but they won't have all the features. You won't be able to get a double bandwidth DMI link. You lose some of the USB 3.2 Gen 2x2 10 gigabit slots, I think.
It's a real tragedy that we have 10 gig USB before we have ubiquity with 10 gig Ethernet.
There are 10 gig switches coming, hopefully, consumer level. So,
to the motherboard end, I also have some additional reviews coming. This one I'm particularly looking forward to.
Which one's that? The Carbon.
This one, it's the Z590 Carbon EKX. So I did the Z490 build with this, and it's really nice, let me tell you. And then I've also got the Z590 Tai Chi, which I think is going to work out really well.
We've got the Hero, we've got the MSI Z590 Ace, and the ASRock Z590 Steel Legend, which is one of their new brand motherboards. So, my motherboard reviewer's got that. I need to send him a CPU when I can spare one.
Now we've also got.
which is good because I wanted to talk about heat generation and thermal density with these new CPUs.
The thermal density is quite high, and this is a 300 watt cooler that can go sub-ambient, but it doesn't really give you all that much more cooling. A little bit more, but not dramatically more.
So a standard cooler works by trying to remove heat from a processor. Now, I know this is wrong physically, but with one of those, you're actually trying to add cold rather than simply take away heat, right?
Well, you've got a little bit of a thermoelectric thing that's adding heat on one side, which takes away heat from the other.
Yep.
And it's very inefficient at doing that. So I can give you 10 or 15 watts of heat taken away from this side in exchange for 300 watts on this side of heat generated.
But so the reason why you might need one of these is so Rocket Lake. I've tested the 11700K retail unit. We saw stock operation 104 degrees Celsius running AVX 512, almost immediate. Now, we don't know whether that's specifically a microcode just running it that high or whether a motherboard vendor has decided that that's appropriate for that level of performance. I use a 2 kilogram, almost 2 kilogram pure copper cooler. One of the best air coolers you can get. Some people argue with me on that, but it's good enough for what I need it. It's taking care of 250, 300 watt CPUs, no problem. That doesn't get hot, but the CPU, as in it doesn't get thermally saturated, but the CPU still hits 104 degrees because it can't remove heat fast enough because the thermal density of these CPUs, if you're dealing with 290 watts in a 2 square centimeter area, 3 square centimeter area, there's a reason why it's called Rocket Lake, I guess. Same thermal density as a rocket. I mean, there's that famous graph that Intel put out 10 years ago, and it's like the march of the Pentium 4 in thermal density compared to a rocket, compared to a nuclear power station. And yeah, processors are some of the most thermally dense, current dense things on the planet. And the reason why you might need... It's weird. I want to call that an active cooler, but it's active in a different way to just having a fan on a heatsink, right?
Yeah.
Because you're adding cold, which again is not the right way to think about it in the physics terms, but
but it's effective. I mean, with this thing, I was able to hit like 5.6 gigahertz fairly reliably on the 10900K, assuming that you could find a really cherry 10900K. Not for everything, not for those AVX workloads. Yeah. That was fast enough to make it through Geekbench and stuff like that. Now, All-Core would have to drop down. But there were the tools and controls to be able to do that, which is nice. I think in the public slides, didn't they also, like, one of the changes this time with overclocking is memory speed, like the whole memory speed thing?
Yeah, this is where it got a little confusing, because some of this ended up being leaked before the announcement. So because you can't really overclock these processors on a standard system anymore, because Intel is hitting those limits when it comes to binning and getting the most out of the silicon from the fabs. You've got favored core initiating turbo. You've got thermal velocity boost initiating even more turbo. What can you overclock? Well, you can overclock the memory. And we know that recent versions of Intel memory controller can do DDR4 4400, 4800, 5000, maybe a bit higher. I actually have a kit of DDR4 5000 behind me.
But I've only got the 4000, the crucial ballistics, but it's really fast.
But there are two elements to the memory operation. You've got the speed of the memory and the speed of the memory controller. Now, either one of those can limit your memory overclock performance. So in the same way that AMD allows you to half the rate of your memory controller speed, Intel now allows you to half the rate of your memory controller speed. Previously, it was all 1-to-1, equal to equal. Now you've got a 2-to-1 memory speed to memory controller speed. This means that you can boost the memory controller, boost the main memory without putting additional load on the memory controller. Though it does mean that...
The max 1-to-1 is like, what, 2933?
So all chips will do 1-to-1 2933. Intel's at 1-to-1 ratios. Intel specifications say that the top Core i9K and the Core i9KF will do Gear 1 at DDR4 3200 by default. Though in my experience, motherboard manufacturers don't give a flying F, and they will put all cores DDR4 3200 at Gear 1-to-1 ratio anyway. So Intel specifications be damned. That being said, most people are probably going to be running higher than DDR4 3200 JDEC specifications anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
I don't know if you can see this, but like this copper block is just bananas. There's a rubber boot around it. This is the cooler, master cooler. I already sort of pre-installed it. It's ready to receive the motherboard. And let's get this rubber boot, I guess, because there's a sensor in here that figures out what the dew point is, and will run this thing just above the dew point, so you theoretically don't have problems with condensation. But as a backup, it does actually sort of make a nice little seal around the processor.
So explain what the dew point is and why it matters.
Well, if you get something that's much, much colder than ambient, then it's going to pull moisture out of the air, and it'll pull a lot of moisture out of the air over a long period of time. And moisture out of the air is missing some electrons, which you will happily find with the electrons on your motherboard. And then electrons end up places they shouldn't be, and bad things happen.
So yeah, it's you know how when it gets colder, the air gets drier because the air can't hold as much moisture, because you're making the air around your cooler colder. As Wendell said, takes that moisture out of the air and it dumps that liquid straight on your motherboard. What the dew point is a point in which that condensation happens. And so if you cool too much too quickly, you go past the dew point and you get condensation. If you monitor the dew point, you can cool to the right level without getting condensation. So normally when we do sub-zero cooling with either solid carbon dioxide or liquid nitrogen, you would normally insulate the motherboard with lots of paper towels, with lots of...
conformal coating, maybe, if you can find one that operates at that low of a temperature.
Liquid electrical tape is usually a good one, because that just essentially coats it with an insulator. So this is why when you go sub-zero, it matters. And if you remember when Intel did the 28-core overclocking of the Xeon W3175X and Computex, and they hid that 750 watt, or was it 1.7 kilowatt chiller out the back?
I think it was 1.7 kilowatts. It was something bananas like that.
A couple of horsepower or something. I don't know. But yeah, they had a lot of insulation, a lot of lagging, and a lot of paper towels to capture the moisture. Oh, and hi Gordon from PC World.
Hey, how's it going? This thing has got an 8-pin power connector. Look at that. 8 pins. 8 pins. That's for the thermoelectric cooler that's right there.
150 watts just for your cooler. You got to put that into your power supply calculator.
It said that it was that, but then I was using one of those little ammeter things, and I was getting closer to like peaks of like 250, like 225, 250 was not unusual with this thing.
Oh no, sorry, it is 8-pin is 225 watts, isn't it? Spec.
I
6
think
pin is 150.
Yeah, the absolute maximum through the connector, not in PC rating world, but in like Molex rating world, this connector would be good for 400 watts before it melts.
It's I've been to many an extreme overclocking event, and yeah,
it's way less than that.
It's way more than that. To the point where back in the day they used to design their own custom VRM boards, and you'd used to solder them in place of the VRM that came with the GPU. So, and then
well, we can't do better than this because the copper on the motherboard's not thick enough. Oh, what a problem to have.
So, I mean, processors, 8 cores, 16 threads, as Wendell said, up to 5.3 gigahertz. You've got Ks, you've got KFs, you've got Fs, you've got Ts. For some reason, Intel doesn't want to use the S anymore. We haven't got any HQs, we haven't got any HKs. Core i9, i7, i5 are all Rocket Lake based using this new Cypress Cove microarchitecture. The Core i3 and the Pentium are Comet Lake refreshes. They're refreshes of the 10th gen, but they've got the number 10 in it, so we'll be able to indicate the difference. And I got a super chat from Gordon, says, speak about the pricing. So I guess we've got to speak about the pricing.
That sounds good. Thank you, Gordon.
So I guess the two main prices to consider, at least the ones I did in my overview, were the Core i7 11700K, which kind of goes up against the Ryzen 5 5800X. The Intel chip is $399. Now, that's their tray price, which is their OEM price for OEM partners who buy 1,000 CPUs. If you want to buy one...
also Micro Center.
Sorry?
And probably also Micro Center. They seem to follow tray pricing because they don't even seem to mark up the CPUs, or if they do, it's behind closed doors.
It's the ones that you buy literally in a tray. He says, holding up a tray of CPUs. So that they would only come with 1-year warranty, those models. But so the retail versions, the retail in box versions, would be about $25 to $30 higher. So we're probably looking at about a $430 for Intel at retail, versus Intel Core i7 11700K about $430 retail against AMD Ryzen 7 5800X, which is $450 suggested retail price if you can find one at that price and stock is improving. Exospook says 11700K $418 at Newegg pre-order. So yeah, $20 over that tray price. It's about reasonable. You don't get a cooler. And at that price difference, so AMD wins by about 8% in CPU tests overall. It's a bit different for a single thread, multi-thread, but 8% overall. In my gaming tests, AMD was ahead by 1% in 1080p max. AMD runs at half the power, half the peak power at least. You can debate whether, during a game, how much power is used. Intel has DL boost, but you arguably do have to spend more on the cooling. And then there's obviously motherboard ecosystem as well to consider. Lots of AM4 motherboards out there, Z590, B560 for the Intel. It's going to be I think that's a good square off in price. I would argue that maybe the price was different before I published my review. and the result.
What have you done?
And it's not the first time I've affected a price of a CPU, but I'm not going to get that confirmation. So yeah, I think that's a good pricing. What makes a drab is the Core i9 pricing. So the Core i9 11900K is tray price is $539. That's $140 more. And all you're getting for that is plus 300 megahertz on a single thread, plus 100 megahertz on all core. And what else do you get with the i9 over the i7? That's about it, isn't it?
DDR? Did you say the DDR4 thing?
Oh, yeah. Gear memory ratio is by stock, but motherboard manufacturers don't care about that anyway. So...
Yeah, see, the 10900K was nice, but like the 10850K, I mean, for a while there, Micro Center was selling the 10850K for around $400. I thought that was a good deal for what it is. I mean, yeah, it's 100 megahertz slower than the 10900K, and Intel really has been that, because I got a few just to mess around with them, and they're great, but yeah, they wouldn't clock higher than the 10900. So if you wanted the absolute best of the best, and you were doing something crazy like this, or crazy like this, yeah, the 10900K made sense. But now with the 11900K, it's like, is that what we're getting? Or I don't know, because the 11700K seems really good, and it's like, well, I could just get the $400 processor and not fool with the craziness.
Yeah, I mean, it's the 11700K is priced probably about right. The 11900K, Gavin's in the chat. Hi, Gavin. He's saying that the 11900K on Newegg now is $614. So that's plus 75 over tray price, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So unless that's coming with a free cooler, a free tech, a free Cooler Master 360 tech. What do you know what the retail is on that?
Yeah, it was like $300. But when I did the video, like I actually held the video on this for over a week because the Newegg price on this was $1,000 from Newegg for this cooler. But MSRP was like, $250, $300, best I can recall. And I found websites that were like, oh yeah, like $249 or whatever. And it's like, for a good 360 all in one, I might get this if I just, wanted a toy to play with, just to squeeze a little bit out of it. Because when you're not using the tech, it's a perfectly competent 360 millimeter cooler because you can run it without running the cryogenics. Yeah, I mean, that's not an outrageous price to me. $1,000 is more outrageous for sure.
So, I mean, a lot of people are pointing to the 10850K because that's in Micro Center for $330 today.
Oh, see, that's a deal.
Yeah, I mean, you'd get that. You'd probably get that over the i7.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we're coming to a situation now where I wonder exactly how many 11900Ks are actually going to come to market. Because it's a higher bin part, maybe it's stretching the process a little bit more. You remember how 10900K was very hard to manufacture, so they released the 10850K.
Yep.
That was a slightly looser binned part, but they could manufacture more of them to meet demand. We may see an 11850K, though what exactly the difference would be compared to the Core i7 is, minimal. So...
Maybe they expect to sell the i7 as the 10850K because that's not. I mean, that doesn't strike me as entirely unreasonable.
Yeah. €5 from Not an Apple Fan. 10850K for the win. If only my Z490 didn't die. Your Z490 died?
The motherboard?
Yeah. Which motherboard was that and how?
What did you do to it?
Last time I broke a motherboard, it's because I dropped a Threadripper processor in the socket.
Those don't fit in those sockets.
Not in those ones. It landed edge on, so it bent a couple of pins, and they can't be bent back. So,
yeah, that's not fun. I had there's a couple of motherboards that I fixed that had much more minor damage than that in the socket. Like a little piece of packing material or something got in the socket and bent like 2 pins, and so it was like jeweler's loop and a needle. And it's like, okay, I got it working. Never take the CPU out of this socket again because it's probably not going to work.
What I tell my father, the first time he had a SATA SSD, he pulled out the SATA cable, but it was a locking SATA cable. And he didn't realize it was a locking SATA cable, so he just ripped it right out. It's like, okay, I'm just going to give you an M.2 and just leave it in the system. I think I even put it behind the motherboard because it was one of the motherboards that had one behind.
I have to say that I really like the M.2 form factor when you can just make it part of the motherboard and then you just don't have to worry about it after that. Like it becomes part of your motherboard and then it's just there.
So general M.2, I'm not too keen on the fact that on a standard system you can only have 2 or 3. Because I can have 6 SATA ports, I can have 10 SATA ports. I've got a motherboard here, literally less than 12 inches away, that has 22 SATA ports. You know, I don't have a motherboard in front of me that has 22 M.2 slots. So, and I believe Wendell's gone to... I got the motherboard.
Sorry, I had to go get the mounting hardware. I forgot on the other motherboard, the previous motherboard. Sorry. You were saying?
A special mount. I was saying about how I have a motherboard here with 22 SATA ports, but I don't have a motherboard with 22 M.2s.
Well, yeah.
I have a project I want to do, but I need 600 terabytes of storage. I can't fit that on with 3 M.2 slots. I might need more than one system as well.
I'll keep my eyes peeled at industrial surplus auctions for when somebody's getting rid of their SAN. It's probably not going to be flash, though.
No.
Probably are going to get a petabyte SAN made up of like 3 terabyte hard drives.
It's, it's a guy who I think works at Google has been in contact. No, not Google, sorry. He works somewhere, maybe Facebook. And we've been talking about doing a sort of project and how the best way to do it is. It's quite fun when you're trying to deal with that many hard drives. Patrick from Serve the Home just did a video with his 1.2 petabytes of storage in a 5U.
It's all just hard drives.
I mean,
there's nothing else. There's no room for anything else.
Well, no, there was 2 dual socket servers underneath.
Oh, okay.
Because it's a 5U, not a 4U.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. That's a lot of storage.
I mean, he said it was, 460 pounds total weight? So you have to watch how it doesn't bend your rack. And also it was consuming about 2 kilowatts of power.
Just to keep the spindle spinning.
Well, the hard drives, when you load them up, they're all about 10 watts piece, aren't they?
Yeah.
And you've got 100 of them, so plus the servers underneath. Yeah, I'll get to that project one day when I get a vendor who will happily let me borrow a few drives. So £4.99 from Hosham. Dr. Ian, do you think Peltier coolers are worth the cost compared to just buying a better air cooler? I'm gonna say no. So on the extreme overclocking side, we used to use Techs or Peltiers for a long time, but it's the fact that you also need to cool the Tech, cool the Peltier, which just means that your cooling requirements for a whole system go way up. Fine if you're doing extreme overclocking, not so much if you're just cooling a standard system. Now, I do like what Cooler Master has done. Cooler Master do some weird stuff sometimes, and it's good that they try this weird stuff. And the fact that they've got a system working, retail, they can produce enough units to at least fund the R&D. Right? I have a feeling that Intel helped fund some of the R&D for it.
Yeah, the software was direct download from Intel, and the software engineers from Intel have got some bugs to fix in the software. I don't think that's it. I don't think the ball for that is in Cooler Master's court.
So yeah, it's a good idea. Definitely not for mass market. Would I put it in my own personal daily system? I don't think I would.
I put it in my gaming system, but I wouldn't put it in my system that I get work done with.
Not an Apple fan. Thanks again for the €5. He says the motherboard was the Z490 gigabyte Vision G. Vision G, Vision D.
I'm only aware of the Vision D.
A 380 broke it, no joke. So
an RX 380?
So what? That was too much power over the connector, or it physically broke the slot? That's whatever way that happened. Assuming it was handled correctly, that's weird.
I gotta find a wrench. I'll be right back.
And I guess while Wendell's away playing with his Intel stuff, we should also talk AMD, which was the topic of my video. So alongside Rocket Lake being announced, we also have the full AMD Milan 3rd generation EPYC launch. Simple, straightforward upgrade, really. 64 cores of Zen 2 going to 64 cores of Zen 3. 19% IPC performance uplift. Lots of 19% this week. But aside from that, most of the platform is the same. There's a few more security enhancements. There's secure nested pages now. So one of the things in enterprise is making sure that when you're running a hypervisor with lots of different VMs and instances, and you've got different customers using them, you want them obviously separated from each other in their own secure environments. But also, in the event that the hypervisor itself gets compromised, those customers still have access to their virtual machines, to their instances, and that's kind of what secure nested pages does. You're back. I've moved on to Milan.
I see how it is. I'm just trying to build a system here. Yeah, I'm excited about all the upcoming security features and literally everything because, yay, secure computing.
So Google's on their next generation of confidential computing with EPYC. Google said that they were first, and IBM came along and said, actually, no, we've been doing it for 2 years. Why don't you talk to us?
Also, would you like to license some patents?
Yeah, that too. I recently did a post about fully homomorphic encryption, which is the ability to actually work on encrypted data without decrypting it. IBM invited me to a press conference that was half an hour long plus 15 minutes Q&A. I was essentially the only one in the Q&A asking questions. They didn't really answer my questions. And then they said
anyone to ask questions.
And then they said, if you have any more questions, talk to your rep. It's like, well, they did a YouTube live stream like this, but because it was a private link, only about 30 people were in there. I think 25 of them were from IBM. But anyway, yeah.
Stop asking questions.
So Milan uses the same socket as Rome, same socket as 2nd generation. So when I asked AMD's head of data center, Forrest Norrod, I said, well, look, last time we spoke with Rome, you had... It was known that there were some issues that you couldn't build all the systems your partners wanted to on day one. And you had to pick and choose which ones were the best. Now with Milan, can you do that? And he said, well, because they're socket compatible, well, half the work's already done. Plus, we've got a bunch of customers who are now thinking, great, we've now executed on the 3rd generation EPYC. Now we're going to consider you a serious option in our data center, in our workload, in our offering. Which, to be fair, somebody who's not been executing for 5 years turns around and says, I'm going to execute for the next 3, and I'm going to take market leadership. You don't believe them day one, do you? Give it another couple of generations, and now they're there. I asked Forrest about the pandemic, whether that's delayed anything relating to Milan. He said, not really. I mean, whenever a big company goes to deploy a new system, like a Milan-based system, they'll obviously do their due diligence, make sure it works for their workload, and do evaluation. He said some of those evaluations were necessarily delayed a little because obviously everybody's working from home, nobody's deploying to a data center. But he said, that was about a quarter of a delay for those customers on that line. But aside from that, the going is good. Lots of questions about supply. AMD are currently in a high demand environment right now for consumer parts. Though on the enterprise side, Forrest believes they've got enough supply for their customers. Partially, I think, because when they were making chiplets for Ryzen 5000, the really good ones they were saving for EPYC. So plenty of epics to go around.
I thought that one of the interesting things from your interview, I read it, was when you asked about the power and it's like plus 40 watts plus the I/O die. I thought that was a really good question.
I have to remember which one that was. Oh yes, I do remember. So with the Milan chips, because there's a increase in the Infinity Fabric speed and a few more tweaks there, the I/O die does consume a little bit more power. A little bit being anywhere from 20 to 40 watts, depending on your configuration. Now, when you've got a CPU that's 280 watts, you're taking more power away from the cores, so you can't be as performant. That's the trade-off you do. Where does the power go? And more power is going to the I/O die. And I said, well, at some point, isn't there going to be an I/O power wall where the I/O is consuming more power than the cores, and you have to get to a point in the future where you design your I/O with the least power possible, but still with the most performance as possible. There's so in AMD still on a 14 or 12 nanometer process with the I/O die. So Forrest said they're executing on future process nodes, both with the cores and the I/O die. He said there's room to differentiate on the I/O die as well with different memory technologies. I mean, he spoke about DDR5. We know is coming to the future. I asked about HBM, and he said we can move to that. Initially, it will likely be a very limited, customized solution for a very specific partner. He didn't say which partner that was, though. I'm of the opinion it might be one of the Exascale systems. Either Frontier or El Capitan. Forrest also gave us the code name for the CPU in Frontier in the US's first Exascale system. He said it is.
Isn't that also a little different though, like in terms of like the GPU interface and coherency or something?
So the CPU is called Trento. It's going to be based on Zen 3. It's going to have a unique I/O die. It is going to have CPU to CPU, CPU to GPU, and GPU to GPU Infinity Fabric links. So no PCIe. Let's all get on board with Infinity Fabric. I asked whether this was the ultimate Infinity Fabric model, and he said, "This is only one step on the progression." So it's the written interview with Forrest is on an Antec. I do have the video version to edit. I'm hopefully going to get around to editing that tomorrow. You'll find the video version on TechTechPotato. That's quite good. I actually recorded that without any issues. Trying to remote record an interview, I have obviously I'm recording him through one OBS window with the audio. I'm recording me through OBS with one audio, and I'm also recording a second camera through a third OBS window, and it just all worked.
That doesn't seem likely.
No, it doesn't, but it did, and it's the interview's about 40 minutes, and yeah, I think it's really good. Mind you, I would say that because I was the interviewer, and my questions are amazing.
They were really good. It is really exciting to see sort of for a while there, it felt like things were kind of stagnating a little bit in the industry. And things are much less stagnant now. I mean, think about where we were, a year ago and where we are now. And yeah, I mean, Milan's impressive, but it's also exactly where AMD said they would be. And so it's kind of an impossible standard because now everybody's going to expect the next 2 or 3 generations to be just as good in terms of uplift.
Well, I mean, they have that graph, don't they, of expected performance over time. And they've already listed next generation Genoa on that graph. Kind of, I think it's about 15% higher?
Yeah.
We're expecting a number of things that may or may not come true, like more cores, Zen 4, so maybe there's an IPC. If we get a new I/O die, that means more power to the cores. I mean, you say 50 watts in that I/O die, that's another 50 watts you can give the cores, which could easily give 10-15% performance.
Yeah, but the I/O die, I don't think the I/O die is ultimately going to be a huge deal because if you look at, you can shrink stuff on the I/O die, and that'll help. but it's mostly I/O stuff, which doesn't really shrink all that well anyway. Like 7 nanometer I/O stuff is not going to physically be that much smaller. Parts of it might use less power, but that's going to eat up a lot of wafer real estate that you could use for other more valuable things. I think they'll probably, like, looking at how much PCI Express 4, a given server actually uses, they could probably tweak it to just not use as much actually running at PCI Express 4 for like the middle workload stuff and get away with it. But the same way that, they take Zen 2 dies and they just pop those out and can pop in Zen 3 dies, probably that's the plan with the IO die as well. It's like, let's just pop out the IO die and pop in a new IO die on a different process that doesn't have XYZ downsides.
So to speak about the processor stack for a minute, you got 3 different sets of Milan CPUs, 7763, 7713, and 75F3.
Yep.
So 64 core, and then 32 core, but an absolute beast.
Yeah, 32 core, but it's going to use all the power.
Yeah. It's the way to think about Milan isn't necessarily at the top end 64 core. I mean, yes, they've got that covered. In most cases, it performs better because of the IPC uplift. There's some little power things, but overall it does better on the workloads we tested. But that 75 F3, 32 cores, single core 4 gigahertz, turbos up to 3.2 all core.
Mm-hmm.
And that CPU, it's got all 256 megabytes of L3 cache. It's also the Zen 3 L3 cache model, so unified 32 meg per chiplet. Yep. And the goal there, I think you really accurately pinned it down with work with Glenn Barry.
Yep.
And with Windows SQL server, because that thing, the license for a couple of cores, it's done on per core licensing, and you pay thousands upon thousands of dollars just in per core licensing. So if you get the fastest 32 core you can get, that'll blitz it. I'm pretty sure once we get the other F series CPUs, especially the 16 core is going to be monster as well.
Well, I simulated the 16 core already, and I think that if anything, the simulating the 16 core was still monstrous performance, and I don't think the boost clocks were quite as good as what you would expect from a true 16 core, because it seemed like it was still boosting in 32 core territory, but the power envelope was in 16 core territory, and everything else was in 16 core territory. But the boost clocks were a little worse than I think that you would get out of a true 16 core, and it was utterly monstrous because for those workloads that used all 16 cores, having the other cores completely disabled, every bit of that power budget went to those 16 cores, and my goodness, that raised the floor on those clock speeds.
I mean, so they introduced the F series with the previous generation, but kind of halfway through, as sort of like the the financial type workloads. That's sort of per core, and I think they've positioned it right this time with going for that sort of server per core licensing model.
Another change under the hood has been with the I/O. So actually, that's something that I'm really curious about on this platform, on the Intel platform, is we got PCI Express 4, and one of the things Intel was touting was PC Mark. I can't wait to take a look at that myself and see how that actually goes, because the I/O latency should be less on this because there's less complexity and overhead. That was one of the things that I tested with Milan, and they added halfway through the cycle, they added an option, most of the OEMs did, called it was like prioritize I/O or something like that. And whatever that does, it prioritized I/O traffic across Infinity Fabric, and that really made a substantial difference in terms of like the maximum number of IOPS you could squeeze out of an NVMe array. I don't know if it's doing stuff to try to hide the latency. Like, it's like, oh, this instruction is to do with I/O. Let's prioritize that. I don't think it's even anything that fancy. I think it's just giving Infinity Fabric bandwidth priority to whatever's going to a PCI Express I/O bus.
Keeping it at a fixed frequency rather than trying to save power during idle periods.
Yeah, but that makes a big difference on Milan, and it seems like there's a little bit different special sauce under the hood to deal with that. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out.
With my interview with Forrest, he basically said you can overclock the PCIe interface. I mean, it's a PCIe standard, but for the customers who want faster PCIe, they can choose to essentially take power from the rest of the system, rest of the cores, and push it through PCIe. So if you really want a faster PCIe link for your AI workloads, I guess.
I need to get things from video memory into main memory as fast as possible. All right, there you go.
Fair enough. What one of the Milan toggles, which is also in Rome, that I don't think a lot of people realize, is that they have these performance prioritization and determinism prioritization. So one's kind of like a fixed power and one's a fixed frequency. So if you need to maintain a minimum level of responsiveness or a quality of service on your system, you can do the determinism mode, essentially.
That plus CTDP, configurable TDP, that appeared on Rome as well, but I didn't get the feeling that a lot of people had good guidance around like what to actually do with that, because configuring up CTDP, I picked up a couple of CPUs at retail, the 24 and 32 core CPUs, the P series, so you get a discount because they're single socket only, and those will let you add like 25 or 40 watts optionally in the CTDP. All you do is just go in the BIOS, and it's not just the determinism slider. You set that, but then you also go into like an overclocking menu, but it's not really an overclocking menu. Set the TDP, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, for bursty workloads, like I'm running a web server or like compiling something or doing something with PHP, all of a sudden those benchmarks are like 20% faster, and it's just because it's got more of a power budget to deal with.
It's AMD doing that floating turbo where they just try and get the most frequency for the power. It's almost as if base frequency just shouldn't come into your state of mind.
Well, it's funny with SQL Server on Rome at the defaults, for a super heavily loaded SQL server, it basically does stick to the base clock. But Milan is not like that. Milan is like 200-300 megahertz above the base clock for SQL type workloads to a limited NVMe array. And I wonder if that's because like they've already done some optimization with the IO die to know that, hey, this is, not using a lot of PCI Express IO. Let's put that to sleep and use the power budget for the cores.
It's Forrest did say that more and more customers are asking for customized configurations. They want to optimize every watt they can out of the system. So the IO that they don't want, it gets fused off in manufacturing. So it consumes zero power. One of the new features with Milan is memory interleaving for 6-channel configurations. So Milan is 8-channel. Milan supports 8-channel and 4-channel natively in a memory interleaved way. Now, when you've got 8 memory slots, that's a lot of physical real estate. If you don't need that much memory and you don't need that much memory bandwidth, if your workload is compute bound, then you run 4 sticks of memory. Now, apparently some customers want to run 6 sticks of memory. They kind of got a nice balance. So AMD went ahead and put in a 6 memory channel interleaving configuration so they can get the best latency and bandwidth without it being slightly lopsided.
Sometimes when you order that stuff, it's the OEM will only put 1 DIMM per channel in there, or not even 1 DIMM per channel, just 1 DIMM. 1 DIMM for the whole thing.
It's my Threadripper Pro review sample that's got 8-channel memory. The OEM sent me it with 2 memory sticks in it. No, which for spec workstation made no difference versus an 8-channel because it's mostly a GPU-bound set of tests. So, but for obviously memory-bound workloads, that matters.
All right, I'm going to get some thermal paste so you can entertain the chat while I'm gone. I'll be right back.
I've had a few super chats, so let's go through these.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Christoph Salsi, $5 Canadian. Hello, guys. Knowing what you know about Rocket Lake, would you choose a 5900X or 11900K for a pure gaming PC? 5900X is what, $550? $599? Even then, against the $600 11900K, I'd probably go the 5900X. Just because it's more efficient. You'd be safe in the knowledge that you're not going to burn through any power. You got more cores, so for those compute-heavy workloads, it'll burn right through them. Can't comment on the 11900K performance, but if it's going to be roughly the 11700K performance, and if the 11700K is performing roughly in line with the 5800X, yeah, if you're choosing between those two, 5900X is probably the way to go. The luggage, Swedish krona, 50. Thank you very much. Tech, why not just get an aquarium cooler since you need custom loop anyway? Now, I'll be a fan. I'll be honest, I'm not necessarily a fan of just liquid cooling in general. I mean, closed loop liquid coolers I like because they're self-contained all-in-one units, but custom liquid cooling, I don't change my system often enough, and I know that custom liquid cooling, you have to be on top of maintenance, making sure everything's all right. I don't want to spend, a day every 3 to 6 months or even a year sorting it out. I mean, my system already is going on 4.5 years old. That needs an update. Then that's how often I update them. So, talking about custom liquid cooling, yay or nay?
Custom liquid cooling. I like the custom liquid cooling. All right, so confession time. I thought it used to be a giant waste of time.
That's literally what I just said. Huh.
Blah blah blah. And then I did the EK has this industrial cooling that is almost identical to like some of the server. There's server cooling for extreme environments, like at the base of a cell tower, and it's not refrigeration cooling. It's just cooling in a rack, and there's some standardized connectors. There's standardized connectors for standardized cold plates for Intel CPUs and blah blah blah. And EK's got a modular kit that's like quick disconnect and quick connect into a block. So it's not a loop of all your devices. Each device has an independent connection to a block. I did a video on that. And I love that. And so I've been using that, and it sort of solves all the problems that I had with a custom loop cooling. So I've got the CPU connected in the loop. The CPU is not quick disconnect. But I've got like a Tesla V100 that has that, and I've got a couple other GPUs that have a quick disconnect cold plate. So I can rotate GPUs between that system and other systems. And it's really nice because it's super, super quiet. So I've got two 360 millimeter radiators and a fractal define XL. And if I'm running one GPU or two GPUs or whatever it is, it's really easy to swap it in and out. But it's also really, really quiet, even when I'm gaming, even when the thing is running like super full tilt. And I really like that. Is that worth the, $600 price of admission? Well, I mean, the cost of the other components in the system was like $5,500. So maybe it is nice that it's quiet. But I also don't feel like I'm melting the hardware. So that's nice, maybe.
Well, my argument was that liquid cooling needs maintenance. And
Yeah.
I just don't want to spend a day every 6 months, 12 months maintaining my system. Because my system that I use, my daily, is 4.5 years old. And I haven't touched that in quite a while.
It's about once a year. So I just use distilled water with a little bit of biocide. And I do have to change the water about once a year. Otherwise, it'll start to gum up and be weird.
I mean, this system that I've got now, I initially had a closed loop liquid cooler in it, the first one. And that got a split in one of the pipes near the radiator, and all the coolant just evaporated, even though it's like a ethylene glycol thing. So it just got hotter and hotter and hotter because there's no liquid in there. I replaced that with another liquid cooler. That's what I've got on now. And I know it gets hot, but that's because it's a 10-core 6950X. Intel's $2,000 CPU.
I literally just retired my 5950X in favor of a 5900X, which I thought was kind of funny.
It's at some point I need to do the whole, here's a new system, I just need to transfer everything over. And I don't want to just take my main hard drive out and stick it in as the main hard drive of the new system, even though that would be easy. Well, there's always something that goes wrong when you do that.
My getting work done machine is a Threadripper, and I'm really happy with that. But like I say, custom loop cooling. But it's also it's paranoia inducing because it's like, what if it leaks and destroys something? I mean, that is a real concern.
Yeah. I'm still. I was gonna do a Zen 3 build to replace my Intel build, but then I played with Threadripper Pro, and that's kind of make me waiting for Zen 3 Threadrippers.
Yeah.
€5 from Jim Treacy. Thanks, Jim.
I've got a few super chats too.
Give a shout out to NAAF versus Tasty PC Overclock Challenge. It's always fun when other people do overclock challenges. I left that world years ago. When is Phase 2 starting, Paul? I don't know what you mean by that. My name's not Paul. Are you Paul?
No.
No.
I don't know. It's really weird. Somebody said, build a 5900X machine to serve 5+ years now, or build a 3600 to 3800X now. Wait for USB 4 to replace Thunderbolt.
You're very faint.
Oh, sorry. It is build a 5900X now, or to last 5 years, or 3600/3800, and wait for USB 4 to replace Thunderbolt. Plan to have my main OS gaming on a VM, and maybe FreeNAS. If you're going to do the VFIO thing, I really like Threadripper or better, or X299 even. Like AM4 is okay for that, but it's not great. And 10th gen Intel, the IO MMU groups on all the motherboards were wrong for doing all that kind of stuff. So I'd probably go for something higher end. But the 5900X, if you're not going to run a ton of VMs or like virtualize the Windows part of it, is a lot of horsepower. 12 cores, 2 chiplets. You won't be disappointed. So you can get a motherboard right now that's got Thunderbolt or USB 4 Thunderbolt, or you will in like a week or two. Asus is working on that.
So, lots of boards coming are going to be, or a few boards that are coming using Intel's Maple Ridge Thunderbolt 4 controller.
Oh, yeah.
So Asus just listed their new Thunderbolt 4 EX card, and that has 2 Type-C Thunderbolt 4 ports, 2 mini display ports on it. No idea on pricing. It's just listed on the website right now.
David Dickinson says, I vaguely recall an incident of leaking. Are you sure water cooling is great? Yeah, I was gaming and the pump started making an awful noise and there was water everywhere. And it was like, that's weird. But I always put the pump somewhere that when it leaks, it's not going to like be completely awful, but it sort of slung water a little bit. So yeah, nothing died, but good Lord.
Kid Rock with 100 rupees. Thanks, kid. Thanks, kid. That sounds like an old southerner.
Okay. Gopakumar? I'm sorry. I butchered your name. I'm very sorry. Thank you. And also the Levon. Is it Levon? The Levon affair. Thank you.
So Kid Rock says, how long until USB 4 replaces Thunderbolt 3 on Intel/AMD, maybe even ARM? I mean,
whenever they can make the chipset.
Well, I mean, Intel's going quite far to do the mobile chips. It's one of the things with the Rocket Lake launch is in the slide deck they said Thunderbolt 4 support on the chipset. Though that's only support if you also include a Maple Ridge controller, which you still have to pay for. So
yeah, I seem to recall last year in some of the press conferences they were talking about how that kind of stuff was going directly into the system on chip, so you didn't have to think about it anymore, like the Ethernet.
Well, I mean, the Ethernet you still need a PHY.
Well, yeah, but that's not. Maple Ridge is a little bit more than a PHY.
But it's the fact that it's optional. When this stuff isn't optional, that's when it moves to mass adoption. I mean, look how much we've struggled with 2.5 gig Ethernet, 5 gig Ethernet, 10 gig Ethernet on these sorts of systems. It's, to be fair, USB has had a faster adoption because it's USB.
Mandatory.
But it's been mandatory and it's been easy to implement because it's been part of the chipset. We're only just now getting USB 3.2 Gen 2x2 on the chipset. And even then, I think most motherboards only have it as a front header.
Well, Gen 2x2 is just a dirty hack. They just said, wait a minute, this is a reversible connector. Why don't we use the other side of the connector at the same time? And that's all it is.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I've got a USB 3.2 Gen 2 10 gig NVMe SSD thing, and transfers at 700 megabytes a second. I'm perfectly happy with it. So, is that your Supreme?
Yeah, that's the video card that's going in this monster. The Supreme X 3090 from MSI is going right in there, and I can't wait.
One of my bugbears is that the people who name this stuff don't know that the letter I has a different sounding than two E's.
Maybe two E's look too leet.
It's like the Lian Li Strymer. It should. I literally asked the PR people, and they said no, it's streamer, and I said, well, no, that says Strymer. And we had an argument about me. I had an argument with the very nice Taiwanese lady about English pronunciation.
Mania says Zen 3 Threadripper, reality or myth?
Myth until reality.
Yeah. Although that 75 F3, if you didn't see the review of that and some of the benchmarks, the 75 F3 in one of those single socket epic motherboards right now, today, you would not be unhappy with that workstation.
Plus it means if you're using Windows, you get one full thread group. And no kerfuffle.
And Andrew Cruz says, is there a way to leave a hard drive connected to a Linux computer, but to spin it up only for backups? Yes, it will do that right out of the box. You can set the spin down time, and Linux won't spin it up unless something goes to write to it. Kyle, how much do you think MIPS going to RISC-V is going to accelerate RISC-V adoption commercially? MIPS is dead. The toolchain for MIPS, I'm so sorry to be the one to tell you this if you didn't already know, but the reason MIPS is dead is not because they've fallen asleep in terms of hardware engineering, but it's because the toolchain is dead. Like, I, as a developer, I go through enough pain and suffering as it is. Like, the existential dread just getting out of bed in the morning, it really is just soul-crushing. And then to tell me that I have to use the MIPS toolchain when I'm aware of the existence of another toolchain from a competitor that actually won't make me want to shove bamboo shoots under my fingernails to make sure that I can still feel something. Yeah, that's we need to just MIPS is bad. The toolchain is bad, and I'm sorry.
MIPS is owned by Wave Computing, and didn't Wave Computing go through like a Chapter 11, but then came back out of it?
Yeah.
So lots of confidence in that technology.
All of the MIPS didn't have to die. I mean, MIPS was amazing. MIPS is like, I think, if I remember correctly, MIPS was like the inspiration for the DEC Alpha, which is legendary. It just sort of was mismanaged, and now it's too late, I think.
Yeah, I mean, RISC-V adoption in itself, there's lots, big players already involved. The question is where you want to see it, and I mean, we obviously want to see it in stuff we're using right now, which actually, because Mr. Pryor sent me one. He said, you don't have to review it, I just want to send you it, and because it's nice and cheap. So this is let's get it right, this is the Hi5 Inventor Coding Kit.
Nice.
Based on Doctor Who. This is designed ages 7+. Connect, code, invent, everything you need to get coding. So it's like a little... I think this one, this is the expansion board, so there's a second update you can get. And it's like a little hand with a load of LEDs and stuff, and you can get in, and it provides everything you need to get started on RISC-V. So I mean,
that's pretty awesome.
This is this one, the expansion board says 150 megahertz Sci-Fi FE310 RISC-V CPU, 2.4 gigahertz radio for Wi-Fi, 64K onboard SRAM, 512K onboard flash, 42 RGB LED display lights, 60 million colors, built-in sensors, edge connector for accessories, expansion bus for I2C, SPI, GPIO, digital analog I/O pins. But yeah, no, this is nice and tiny, and the idea is that if you've got Oh, and that's your RISC-V soldering iron.
I did. It doesn't. It's. I've got a side project going. I'm trying to use this as a store for SSH keys, so I could plug this into the computer and run an SSH key agent on it. And on the little screen, it's like so and so is trying to connect. Is this okay? And I can hit the button, and it'll allow the connection through the SSH agent. But it doesn't quite have enough memory to do that.
You mean you don't keep your Bitcoin wallet on there?
There's not quite enough space to do that. But maybe there are enough GPIO pins that I think I could maybe bit bang an SPI EEPROM and do it that way. But at that point, that just seems hideously evil.
Well, I got to go through the trash for my $72 million worth of Bitcoin because it's on my soldering iron.
Yeah, I mean, why not? Evan says, I know it's not intended, but how do you think the gaming experience on the 73F3 or 72F3 would be? I think it's going to be surprisingly good, and I'm going to build it. Just wait. Don't worry.
I'm waiting for the usual suspects to come out with proper motherboards. The gigabytes, the supermicros.
I've got the motherboards. I don't have the BIOSes.
You have the motherboards already?
Yeah.
They lied to me. They said they were still in.
No, they're ROM boards. There's just no BIOS for them.
Right.
I've had them for like forever.
I thought Gigabyte did a new version.
They might have. If that's true, then I don't have the new version.
MW72 or something. Either way, need it in.
Hey, listen. AMD said that it was going to be drop-in compatible with ROM. I've got ROM boards. I need the follow through on the drop-in.
The bosses, yeah.
But yeah, I think several people are working on new boards specifically for ROM. I don't think any of those are out yet, but that'd be nice to have.
It's what I want. I'll stick in a bunch of memory and yeah. Well, I mean, so one of the things you have to remember is that the Epics obviously will have to run at JDEC RDIMMs.
Yeah.
So, but you do have 8 channels.
Yeah.
So it'll be fine. If anything, so at the minute our chips were tested by Andre. So our AMD review system, because it's the same review system from Naples. I know you just got yours from Milan, but I think we got ours originally at Naples. It's actually it gave the postcode dead, and we don't know why. AMD said, yeah, okay, send it back. Because these are dev systems, they're internal dev systems that they let us, they give us for reviews, and they let us remote in to test. So we don't actually have a system right now. But when I get it, I'm going to run Crysis CPU benchmark.
128 cores of Crysis and CPU render. That's nice. All right, I think we're ready to turn this on.
Yeah, wait, GPU.
I'm not supposed to do that. Oh,
if he's breaker trips and he drops from the stream. Rah cable management. Gavin has sent me £5. You idiot, Gavin. We work together. You don't need to send me super chats on. You can just ping me over, our usual channels.
YouTube's going to keep like that. I mean, that's just mean.
Strimer is the RGB cable that cuts your grass. Does it turn on? Have you turned it on, or are you just going to leave it?
No, they'll have to check back later for the performance review and the postcodes and all that kind of stuff. I can't even show you the postcode. ASRock Rome D82T will be the best Epic gaming board. I don't know. There've been a lot of like 1 and 2 star egg reviews on that. A lot of people online are like, "Oh my god, it murdered my CPU." Really? I don't know.
Don't mind me. I'm searching for things.
Woo!
I don't know where I put it. I do actually have my Rome D8 around. It's the one board I do have. Oh, here we go. Underneath some single core Zotac motherboards.
Tomo says Zen 3 APU inbound. Yeah, the engineering samples on eBay are inbound.
I tried to buy one of those.
I
They
know
all
somebody.
went.
Yeah, I know somebody that got one. So
Really?
I might get a look. I might get a look at that. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, you know how good I am for remote access and sliding some. It's. I've got some of your currency here. I know it exists.
It's a lot of fun. I mean, it's like, what are they doing with this? And I've been really happy with the 4750G. There's a little system right over there. I guess I could go get it, but it's a 4750G 8-core, and it's surprisingly competent. And on a desktop board, you can feed it a lot more than 65 watts, and it seems to run just fine.
The supply of those from international channels is getting pretty regular now as well.
Yeah.
It's when I did my 11700K review, in the graphs I put in all 8-core CPUs, and I also included the 4750G in there just to show where the 8-core Zen 2 would be against Rocket Lake. And you can tell it's deficient. I mean, it's still a really good part. It's deficient compared to Rocket Lake in a few areas because it has such a low L3 cache complement. And it's only 65 watts. But if I honestly think that AMD's goal there was, well, okay, they're coming out with Rocket Lake, we're going to counter it with APUs. So we just have our standard Ryzen CPU only stuff. That's their new. That's just a different market altogether now.
Yeah,
and
the 65 watt, like the performance uplift you got from cranking it to 95 watt, would actually make the GPU performance a little worse, I guess, because of heat. But the CPU performance was, on par with what you'd expect from a 95 watt 8-core Zen 2.
It's to be honest, I think because AMD is going through such a high demand phase right now for consumer parts, if they're going to drop anything from their market or at least delay it 3 months, 6 months, it would be the APUs.
Yeah. That gives them manufacturing flexibility too, playing those kind of games. So,
I mean,
it would make sense why they do that.
They could have come out with it if one of their other products had failed miserably. But GPUs are selling hand over fist. CPUs are selling really well.
I guess we could unbox this while we wait. The chat is so chatty.
Oh, is your system doing a network install, OS install?
Where?
No, I mean the system you just built.
Oh, no, it's just in the floor.
Just set it up, bang it in, off it goes.
Yeah, where no one can see it. So,
nice. When is the new high-end desktop CPU from Intel coming? It's not.
Yeah, we don't know. We can't say.
No, the new high-end desktop.
Oh, like something beyond. Oh yeah. Ooh.
Like an 11980 XE. No,
I don't.
It's
well,
not.
I mean, there's.
It's not. They don't have anything they can use.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that. They don't, but they do, but they don't. So yeah.
I don't think they. Yeah. Hey Ian, do you work in a basement? Almost. I'm actually above ground floor, at least anyway. I think a basement would necessarily be cooler.
I've got geothermal, and it's like, yeah, all the computers. If you had geothermal, that would make the cost of mining a lot less.
Ian's lab is such a mess. This is
mine is too.
Yeah. It's I'm working with 130 square feet, and in that I have to do all my testing, all my writing, all my video recording. I've got, on a good day, I'll have 7 systems running, and you can't hear yourself due to the fan noise. So I have some good noise cancelling headphones to write when I have to record videos or do streams. In the Level1Potato remix, most of those systems get turned off. I've got 2 running now, So
we have to turn off all the things.
yeah.
When I was doing the Milan testing, I wasn't doing it in the server closet, and so like the other people in the office were like, "What is that jet engine?" Because it was like,
Yeah.
It was funny.
Have you got all the fancy extras in the box?
Yeah, it's got the pressure tester thing, and then the block that goes on here, which is nice because it's a mono block. It's going to cover the VRMs and everything. So, out of the box without the mono block, it's one of the most lightweight motherboards ever. But with the mono block, it's a chunker.
You mean compared to the Asus WRX80 Pro WS Sage? That's probably
that one's also a chunker, but that one has about 5 times as many PCIe lanes. Probably about 12 more layers on the PCB as well.
Sebastian, I think you did ask an Infinity Fabric question, but I scrolled past it. Ask it again. I think it's about the future of Infinity Fabric. Where do you think it's going? Infinity Fabric has 2 goals: faster and more efficient. That's all AMD has to enable it to do, I think. I mean, it's aimed to be cache coherent across CPU, GPU, unified memory space. Maybe there's some security updates in the future. So, and Cobrax, maybe he's running NVIDIA RTX Voice to remove the PC background noise. Yes, I am. I'm running RTX Voice on my GTX 1080.
Nice. It does a good job.
I'm also running the pre-broadcast version. I'm still running the beta that they put out first. Haven't updated.
Too afraid that they've changed something and it works subtly different now?
No, on one of my laptops I installed it, and it was a pain because it kept crashing. So, love the question about the Infinity Fabric future in Frontier. Share your theories about the future of IF. Yeah, it's faster and more efficient. It's there's an I/O power wall, and at some level, you're going to end up with customized SKUs based on I/O rather than compute, or compute rather than I/O. There's going to be a bifurcation. Couple that with memory bandwidth, I think.
Well, that's one of the advantages of the chiplet design, though, is that because there's already kind of a decoupling of those things, you can sort of cheat at the whole power density thing before it becomes a problem, because you can just move all that physically somewhere else, and it's not so far away that it's hugely problematic. Because, like, if we had a better interconnect that wasn't so lossy than just like pure silicon, it might not be that terrible. It's just that everything is so far away, and it's not even really that it's so far away. It's that it has to go through so many repeaters, which are their own transistors that have settling time. We need a better medium.
You may have seen 2 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, Samsung doing its new compute in memory HBM2.
Oh yeah, I did see that.
So I had a call with the head of Samsung Memory, who did that project. I think that was just a general press Q&A. I want to come back to maybe actually interviewing him at some point. But what they've done is they've essentially enabled some mini compute engines on HBM2 to do some level of basic Mac compute for data that's coming in. They've enabled it on standard HBM interface. The way you initiate the operations is you call to a very specific memory address and, virtual address, obviously, and then that translates it right. Mm-hmm. My problem with compute in memory is that you're, say, taking 10 watts of compute from the CPU and putting it to 10 watts into the DRAM, HBM, and therefore you have a thermal issue that you now have to deal with over there. They turned around and said it's actually not raised the power of the HBM2 at all. So it's free compute. And they can get, I need to go back, but it's, so many additional Mac operations. And it looks like really interesting technology. Abby asks Threadripper Pro, can it support non-ECC memory, and can you overclock the RAM to get more bandwidth? I haven't tried it with non-ECC memory. I tried it with LR DIMMs and it didn't work. I went the other way. I went to more. Yeah. I haven't tried. I can't tell you. I've got CPUs. You've got CPUs. You've got motherboards though. I don't have motherboards.
For what?
Threadripper Pro.
Oh yeah, I do.
There's no embargo on that data. It's already out. Yep. So you'll see reviews from Wendell and I in time.
Threadripper Pro is exciting, let me tell you, for reasons. I've only got a terabyte of memory for the board that I have though, which I guess is that the maximum? That's
2.
No, 2 terabytes if you get the density. No. Oh, you can't get that.
But because you're running 1 DIMM per channel, you can only get 1.
Is it? Yeah, that's right. That's right.
You have to have it.
Yeah.
But yeah. I don't think anybody's built a 2 DIMM per channel Threadripper Pro board.
No. So, I was trying to because somebody had recently, I thought, announced quad rank RDIMMs.
The 256 gig modules.
But I don't know if those would work.
So I tried my 128 gig LR DIMMs in the Lenovo system. Lenovo turned around and said, even though it's got 8 DIMM slots, we'll only support half a terabyte. And I tried my memory in it, and they were right. It doesn't work. They haven't QVL'd it, so
makes sense. It would be a lot more loading on the memory controller anyway. So
yeah.
Thanks for the super chat. A Bavarian Normie Pleb asks, any news about Rocket Lake and HDMI 2.1? No progress on my 4750G going beyond UHD 30 Hz 10 bits per channel with chroma subsampling. So that's an interesting project. On my 4750G, we've been kind of going back and forth on the forum, and the software it shows up in the software, but you can't set it. And a lot of the manuals say, oh, HDMI 2.1, but then I've sent emails to be like, hey, what's going on with this, because it doesn't work. And then quietly, the manuals for the motherboards that I inquired about are revised to say only 4K 60 hertz HDMI 2.1. So I don't think like more than 60 hertz on 4750G and 10-bit color works properly. But it will show up in the driver.
Didn't he ask for Rocket Lake?
Yeah, but he was wondering about Rocket Lake. I can't disclose anything about Rocket Lake.
Well, no. So Intel's actually already announced this as support. I'm literally reading from the AnandTech article that we've already posted. It's in one of the slides we were allowed to publish today. It says, Rocket Lake, new enhanced display, integrated HDMI 2.0 and HBR3 support.
So not 2.1.
No. There's no asterisk that says maybe upgraded later. So
I just want 120 hertz variable refresh rate on the LG OLED display. That's all I want. Is that so much to ask for? I mean, the new graphics is up to 50% faster according to the slide, right?
I still haven't got a 3000 graphics card.
So
I'm still rocking my 2080 Ti's.
Well, you're not missing too much, really. I mean,
these are the CPUs I have to test with, and yes, they all still have the plastic on.
It definitely fills the void. You know, the emptiness inside goes a long way toward filling that.
Have some high-speed overclocking DDR3.
I've got some Mushkin Redline here somewhere.
Oh, so one thing I should show on stream. I want to do a video on this soon. I recently did an interview with Richard Uhlig, the head of Intel Labs, which is Intel's Moonshot division. That's where they do the 10-year visionary compute. So they don't do standard CPU compute in the same way that we think about cores. They look at new models of compute. They look at things like neuromorphic computing, teach a computer how to smell, quantum computing, silicon photonics. So they're looking at ways to change QPI links into optical links, which I think is really interesting. I kind of want to do a video on that. But they sent me this. See, flashy Intel Labs logo there. This is one of their neuromorphic compute boards.
Oh, nice.
With 32 of their Loihi chips. Each one of these is 128,000 neurons. And the idea is that this is, you put 3 of these in a system backed by an Area 10 FPGA, and you can run spiking neural networks or any sort of neuromorphic compute on it. This is a dead board because they wouldn't send me a live one. Well, I thought it was easier to ask for a dead sample demonstration unit. And I'd want to stick it under the camera and just say, look at the shiny. And then obviously explain what neuromorphic computing is and why it matters. They actually sent me this at Christmas, and I need to get around to doing something with it. Thanks, Intel.
I've been really impressed. I hate to say it, but I've been really impressed with some of the stuff that Apple's been able to pull off just with their stuff, which is just leveraging ARM plus a tiny little bit of machine learning assist in silicon. It's really not a lot. It's really not insane what they've done in silicon on the algorithm part of it. But as a developer, you can leverage that. Like the ARM cores plus a little bit of Apple's flavor of neuromorphic, which is not even really as advanced as that, I'm sure. And you can get a lot done with that. And it's really interesting.
Accelerators are here to stay, I think. Speaking about Apple and the demise of potential server processors, you saw the Nuvia acquisition with Qualcomm completed today. So Nuvia, headed up by ex-Apple and ex-Google engineers who wanted to make server CPUs. They were on a roll. They said, we're going to have a new server product end of next year. Then Qualcomm purchased the company and said, we're going to use your expertise and IP to make laptops. So the goal here is that Qualcomm wants Apple M1 better performance than Apple M1 in a Windows on Snapdragon system.
Well, that would have been the goal when the original Surface X launched. So I'm hoping this acquisition will let them achieve the goal that they've always had from the beginning.
For as much money as these companies throw around, they purchased Nuvia for 1.4 billion.
That seems like a good deal.
Yeah, and they've said silicon by end of next year, which I assume means initial silicon. So product silicon is probably 2023. I'll definitely want to have a look when it comes out.
We have 3 super chats. Thanks, Mike Farino says, "What's the best place to buy new servers in the U.S.? Depends what you need. Ingram Micro is probably the best distributor that you've never heard of if you're not looking for like Dell or HP Enterprise or something like that.
Try Fry's.
Fry's might be liquidating some of the servers they were using previously, but I have a feeling that those are all 5 years old plus.
And they're down on the stall next to the washing machines.
Michael Skrzinski says, "Do you think the market will be flooded with GPUs once ETH goes to 2.0? Nah, something else will probably be mined. Maybe, but I kind of doubt it.
Like Octopus, clearly.
Yeah, or Doge." Elfrain says, "Have you tried limiting the power usage on the current GPU? How does it scale? Are you talking about with the 3090? If you do power limit it to like 250 watts or 280 watts, the performance is still really good, but it doesn't scale linearly. Like, all things being equal, if it's just about pushing pixels, if you could do 100 FPS at 4K, you'd think you could get 400 FPS at 1080p, but that's not actually how it is with the game engine or anything like that. So at lower resolutions, you can basically scale down the power however you want, and it doesn't make any difference until you're at like 200 and 220 watts. It's only like 4K and like full DLSS and full memory bandwidth, pushing GDDR6X as much as you can, that you are really dipping into the upper ends of the power envelope on those cards. That's because it's just nonlinear scaling.
I've got a few super chats here. I'm sure we can go one by one. Thanks, Leo Comerford, for the €2.29. Any relief coming for GPUs from high-end XE from Intel? Not anytime soon, come back second half of the year, I think.
Yeah, the thing with XE graphics right now is density. It's like you can build your own Stadia with them. That's about it.
Yeah. Nanda Gopal Gopakumar, thanks for the 120 rupees. When will Tangle Lake's successors replace classic silicons? So Tangle Lake is a third generation 49 qubit transmon qubit processor from Intel. Intel's actually moving away from those sorts of transmon qubits and looking at spin qubits. And they haven't really announced how many spin qubits they're at right now. The thing with quantum computing is that you have to have more physical qubits than you have logical qubits because of noise and ECC. So how long? Intel's roadmap said 2025 plus. I asked the guy, he said, think about it longer term than that. And it's a case of engaging with the ecosystem and customers when they're ready. And they're not even ready at that point yet. So
exciting times.
3 kilos. Thank you for the 25 Romanian lei. I recognize that. I've been to Romania many times. This is an excellent show. Cheers for the stream to Ian and Wendell. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can't see you. How many concurrent viewers have you got right now?
It's 681 right now, but we peaked at like 950.
I've got 393, and that's my peak right now. I'm going up. Over 1,000 between us.
That's pretty awesome. It's nice to have friends on the internet, especially when they give you the magic internet money. I mean, that's fine. But, you know. I am really excited about, between like server compute and, it's honestly impressive how much life Intel's been able to get out of 14 nanometer. But also, like the last time this happened in Intel's history, once they actually were awake again and doing good stuff, they produced some really incredible products. So, Rocket Lake definitely does so far feel like a sort of a stopgap product since it's 14 nanometer, 10 nanometer engineering on 14 nanometer. But at the same time, if they keep it together, the engineering that comes out of there is going to be incredible. And then ARM is breathing down everybody else's neck. So, and then GPU compute. I mean, it seems like everything is accelerating more than it has. Like the rate of acceleration has increased. It was always an acceleration, since 1979, but now the rate of acceleration is increasing more than it has in the past.
And the rate of increase in demand has accelerated even faster.
Yeah. I mean, who knew that we would be carrying around? If you told me 10 years ago that the first thing that would be mainstream and on something like a leading edge 5 nanometer process would be people's phones, I would have thought you were crazy. There's no way. That doesn't even make logical sense. You're talking about the thing that you could bludgeon somebody with that makes horrible noises when you move it around, like clang. That thing is gonna, have a 5 nanometer. It's gonna have the world's most advanced microprocessors and the world's most advanced stuff in it. That really? That doesn't make sense.
Niklaus Lurs, thanks for the US $5. I really appreciate you getting into the weeds with the hardware engineering. Unrelated, could you look at the crypto GPUs for GPU application? It's one potential market. The headless crypto GPUs for but it. Oh, I guess you mean the CMP models from NVIDIA.
Yeah,
they're not sampling the press with those, unfortunately.
You have to buy 100 at a time.
Yeah, it's. I mean, well, I would argue somebody like a Gamer's Nexus might be better suited at that. They'll probably find one somewhere on an eBay or a Taobao.
I was thinking something more like, let's put a Discord together and get everybody that we can get, like everybody everybody I know, and everybody they know on one Discord. That should be a group buy good enough for at least 100 of those mining cards. I mean, come on.
It's the Level1Techs mass drop for GPU mining cards.
It's like, you won't give it to us, and we'll buy it. That's fine. What's the market value of these cards? $500, $1,000. Get 100 of us together. It's only $100,000. We can get it done.
Well, unfortunately, it's getting a bit late here. 9 p.m. I still need to have dinner.
Thanks, David Thomas. Yeah, it's been awesome though. We have to do these live streams more often because
For
I always
sure.
have a lot of fun, and the chat always has a lot of good questions that I never anticipate. And we also, I'm prepared for technical difficulties now. So when we run into technical difficulties, it's like, oh yeah, look, stuff's happening.
And I think we've got the co-live stream stuff working as well.
Yes.
It's and when we all go traveling again, we also need to meet up and do an in-person one as well.
Yes, that'll be good. Are you going to Computex this year? Is it still on? Yeah, I don't know either. I have not booked my flight yet, which usually I would have booked my flight by now.
It's still up in the air. I mean, yeah, I'm still waiting for my vaccine, so
I get mine actually, I think tomorrow or Thursday. It's this week. So
you'll be fine. Fine. So, I mean,
it'll be fine.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's even if there's no news, we should definitely do sort of more Q&As because I know my chat's been full of questions and I've only been able to get 2 of the super chats, unfortunately.
Yeah, the questions are good too because it's a good indicator of what content people will actually watch, which is nice. Because sometimes I get excited about something and it's like, look at this amazing video that I did, and everybody's like, yeah, that's great. Yeah.
So yeah, let's do this again. Thank you everybody for watching. Really appreciate you sticking around for a couple of hours of us blabbing.
We got one more super chat. I'm sorry. Are MEM resistors the future until QPU comes out for consumers? No. Next question. Phase change memory isn't even a thing, let alone MEM resistors, and MEM resistors are even slower than phase change.
I need to get in contact with Fujitsu again to speak about Nantero and their carbon nanotube memory as well.
That might be fun.
Yeah.
Here's a carbon nanotube canister, and we're just going to open that up like Tupperware, stuff some electrons in it, close it, and it's fine. Yeah. That's actually how it's built.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. I think you all need to go eat as well.
Yeah.
Have a tater on me.
TechTechPotato. The
Level1Techs.
That's fine. All right. Awesome. I'm stopping the stream. Thank you, everybody. See ya.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. It claims it's down.